Hi, how you doing? Is this Markus?
Yes, it is.
Hey, Markus, you hold on just a second. I'll grab a brandy for you.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Not bad. How are you today?
Oh, I'm all right. I'm in Virginia. It is a home state show, so it's going to be a nightmare. But other than that, I'm okay.
Are you guys? I'm up in Philadelphia, and we're getting walloped with rain right now. How about you guys down there?
Yeah, it's been off and on. It's kind of humid, so it's off and on.
Thank you for writing a really fun book to read. I just want to say it was really fascinating and really interesting. And having spent 10 days in Prague in 99, 2000, some of the pictures you portrayed and some of the, I was able to see some of that stuff clearly. So it was pretty awesome. And I'm sure at the same time it was really scary. But one of the things that really stood out to me throughout the whole book, and it was mentioned early in the book, is honor. And you showed so much honor and at the same time so much courage. Was it hard to stay focused and keep thinking, I've got to be honorable in such crazy conditions, in such a surreal situation?
I wouldn't say. I mean, the whole experience was hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh yeah.
The whole experience was hard, but it wasn't hard for me to know that I had to do what I thought of as the right thing. That wasn't hard for me. For me, when I got sober, and that happened before all this went down, I had to really face my problems, and I was already in the habit of trying to do the right thing and slowly trying to become, a better person, I suppose. I mean, I've never been like this horrific monster or anything. I was just a garden variety drunk, but I wasn't too good with dealing with my problems. So by the time this went down, I'm kind of automatically in the mind frame that I have to face this. So it wasn't particularly hard to know what to do. Whether it was an enjoyable or relaxing situation, that's a whole different matter.
Definitely did not seem relaxing. I didn't feel any relaxation during the reading part of you in Pankrac Prison. But at the same time, from what I've seen on TV about American prisons, it seemed like you might have been in something that was a little more mild and tame, not as violent necessarily.
Well, there's two different ways to look at that. One is that there didn't appear to be so much of racially based gang sort of violence within the Czech prison, because for the most part it was racially homogenous. And this is not saying anything about race. This is just the fact of the matter. It was mostly white European people. So there wasn't this sort of gang division along the lines of color, which you certainly do see in American prisons. I have friends who've done stretches, and it's very, very real. So fortuitously for me, just by luck of the draw, I got locked up in a place where everybody kind of looked like me for the most part. So there wasn't that aspect of the violence. However, the prison was, as far as standards of living and so forth, it wasn't anything close to an American prison. The only prisons I've heard of that, where it would be that the conditions were that poor, like the Tent City outside Phoenix, Arizona, which is notorious. However, there was, a few months before I went there, because of the conditions of the prison, there was a 5 prison-wide riot, coordinated riot that was foiled, that was supposed to occur across the Czech Republic. They were upset about the living conditions. So, a few months before I was in there, luckily they broke it up. They found hundreds and hundreds of homemade shanks and stabbing weapons, all that stuff. So, I'm just glad that didn't occur while I was there.
Yeah, that would have sucked.
It would have been totally chaotic. I don't speak Czech. I wouldn't have had any idea of what was going on. I would have just had to put my back against the wall and hope for the best. So violence does exist in that prison. It's just not based along racial lines so much as it is here in America.
Now, on page 346, you talk about how prison dehumanizes you, and you've talked a little bit about the conditions, and we hear about it, but the reality of it is quite scary, quite real, and I don't know if people can really, unless you've experienced it, can grasp that. How has it impacted you or changed you both positively and negatively as a person, the dehumanizing aspect of prison?
really, I mean, I guess now as a person, every now and then I'll think if something sucks, I'm like, well, at least I'm not in prison because that really sucked, you know. But it hasn't made any sort of lasting, you know, impact on my character, I don't suppose. You know, the fact of the matter is I was in prison I was locked up for 37 days. So it's not like I did years and years and years. Yeah. That's when it kind of really seeps into your psyche and really alters you as a person, I believe. I wasn't in there long enough for it to permanently change the internal mechanisms of my being, as it were. But I'm sure had I been in there long enough, it would have. You know, it makes you paranoid. That's a perfectly defensible position when you're in prison, is to be paranoid. There's a lot of behaviors that would be considered sociopathic, perhaps, on the outside, that in prison makes sense, you know? So for me, I mean, after all this was done, you know, it's when I think about things and if something's upsetting me, I could think, well, at least you're not in prison. Yeah. I got some gratitude for that. But other than that, it hasn't really had that much of a lasting impact. While I was in prison, definitely. But once I was out, you know, I'm just me. I wasn't in there long enough for it to really alter me.
Has your poop prudishness slowly returned, or is it irrevocably gone? Because you mentioned that segment was hilarious.
Well, you know, I mean, I'd already I'm in a touring band. I'm used to using the bathroom whenever I can, and I've gone in some pretty disgusting places. But being in prison and being in a cell with another dude, and then eventually with two other dudes where there's just an exposed toilet, it kind of removes your automatic need for privacy when you need to take a dump. But you know, normally now I don't have to think about it too much because I'm out in the civilized world where toilets have doors. You know, it's not like people are constantly forcing me to do a number two with other people.
There was like little pieces in the book that I thought were great. Like you talked about the unknown guard who handed you smokes and apologized. Have you ever found out who this was since the release of the book?
The guard?
Yeah, the guard who was an unknown guard to you.
No. But I just played that same festival recently, and I played it in June, in Germany, and I shouted him out from the stage. I said, hey, this is to the guy who brought me some smokes and saw me in prison, you know, who looked after me there. So in case he had returned to the festival. So I hope he was there. You know, I was looking out for him.
And I know you met some interesting characters like the guy you called Felix. Did you ever find out who he was in real life or why he was there? Because I know in your book you referenced that he might be a snitch.
Well, I think he was in there for a domestic situation, you know, just some drinking, nothing too horrible, and he wasn't particularly proud of it. But I think that in prison, he had developed the reputation of a snitch, and I honestly don't think he was. I think he was just he was super educated and kind of snotty and kind of like, this place is a little bit too good for me, maybe. Mm-hmm. And I think that didn't sit well with some of the other more rough-edged guys I was in there with. You know, he stayed in his cell for the most part after all that came out because they were going to work him. But I haven't really kept up with anyone from prison, you know. It's A, most of them didn't speak English, and B, some of them are still in there, and C, it's not like I can just email them or add them on Facebook or something. How you doing, dude? Prison shaking, you know. It's not like that.
Yeah, but I figured like with you playing a show in the Czech Republic or with you playing a show near the Czech Republic, because it's so easy to get around Europe in the train situation, who knows, maybe they'll show up at one of your shows and say, hey, do you remember me from...
They might, but it's not like they can just show up and say, hey, there's a backstage and stuff. It's not like we're playing in a parking lot somewhere.
No. But, you know, I mean, you know how fans are able to sometimes you run into fans in weird places and I don't know.
Not yet. I haven't seen any of my old jailbird buddies yet.
And do you still harbor a grudge against the prosecutor?
You know, resentments are dangerous to really anyone, I think. Holding a resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die, because resentment it just sits inside you and festers. If I think about the prosecuting attorney, I can get pretty mad, but I try, it's been a few years now. I try and let it go. I got pretty irate with him when I was writing the book, particularly the part about the court case, or when I wrote about him trying to just spin the wheel to keep me in prison. It irritated me. But, in general, it's something I'm just trying to put behind me. I wrote a 500-page book about it, and it's kind of like laying it to rest, I suppose.
Speaking of the book, how did you decide, there are many ways you could have written the book. How did you decide to write your story the way you did it? Did you take all your notes? How did you put it together the way you did?
Well, the story just kind of wrote itself. The hardest part about writing a book for me was not the writing. It was just sitting down to write, I knew I wanted to address being in a band for people who aren't familiar with my band, because not everybody that reads that book is going to be a Lamb of God fan. So there's a chapter about that. And I thought it was important to address my alcoholism. But other than that, the story really just sort of presented itself. The outline was there, and it was given to me by the events themselves. I lived it, not as if I had to make up a story.
Yeah.
It was all there. And I had a journal. Basically, the biggest challenge with that was just conveying what the events had occurred in an artful manner. And the biggest challenge in that wasn't even the writing, because I read a lot.
Yeah.
I learned to write by writing and reading. The biggest challenge is just sitting down at the blank page. Read a quote somewhere, I can't remember from who it was as an author, that said, writing is easy. You just sit down and stare at a blank page until your eyes bleed.
That's pretty funny. But now you said you're reading. What are you currently reading?
At this particular moment, I kind of got sidetracked. I was reading a bunch of other stuff, but my guitar player, Mark, loaned me a true crime book, which I'm not a big aficionado of, but a book called The Iceman. I believe it's called The Iceman. It's about this Polish guy who was a pretty gnarly, almost serial killer hitman for the Gotti family. So it's pretty brutal.
Oh, wow. And I'm glad that you were able to find some books to read. I know you like to read a lot, and I think that's great. Are you currently writing a new book? Anything different?
I'm working on sort of kicking the idea around. It'll be fiction, but I'm out here on tour. It's really hard to write on tour. I write about that in the epilogue of the book, about how I tried to write some on tour. So it's really hard for me to write on heavy metal tour. There's a lot going on. But I'm trying to start outlining this piece of fiction, and I hope to do.
Have you gotten any answers from the U.S. government about the way they handled the situation from our end to this day? Or are you still completely in the dark?
No, I think my lawyers asked, and they kind of brushed him off and said, it's not our habit to inform potential criminals that they are wanted. But that's like nonsense. If you thought I was a potential criminal, you would have cooperated with an investigation from the Czech government. So I haven't gotten any answers from them, and I don't expect any. There was a White House petition when I was locked up to get me out of there, for them to at least do something. And after it got enough signatures, there was a statement that said, we are monitoring his case. That's it. So that's, I don't expect any answers.
I got to say, from the little bit you put about your wife in the book, she sounds like she's a really strong person. And the way she handled the paparazzi and the press, which was really nasty in the Czech Republic, was pretty good. And you gave her a lot of props, and I think that's awesome that you did that.
Yeah, she'll be coming out later today since we're in Virginia. So she's a good woman. It takes a special woman or a special dude if you're inclined, or a woman who's in a band to stick with it. Someone who travels as much. It can be difficult on a relationship, be away from home so much, doing what we do for a living, and me getting locked up over all this nonsense. The fact that she handled it so well is a testament to her character, and I love her very dearly, so I did want to give her some props. I'm glad you picked up on that.
That's awesome. She sounds like an amazingly strong woman, and to have a partner like that, and you didn't even have to go into a lot of detail, but I picked up on the fact that you guys have a pretty hard and a pretty solid connection, and that's important in relationships. So
yeah, we're quite close.
My last question is, as an old fisherman, describe the robe you will be wearing as you hobble away.
It will be gray, voluminous. It'll be quite large. There'll be a large hood on the back that would cover most of my face, and it'll have, sea salt and sand all over it because I won't wash it much. I'll be at the beach. I'll be too busy fishing.
Excellent. And I know you're a big Genghis Khan fan. The Genghis Khan exhibit is at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia until January 3rd.
Right on.
So if you get up here, let us know.
I will do so, sir.
And thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the great read, Dark Days. And this interview will be up on our website by the end of tomorrow.
Right on. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a kick-ass show tonight, Randy. Take care.
Thank you, bro.
You bet. Take care. Bye.